Hello and welcome to Coronavirus Q&A, half an hour to put your questions to those in the know. Tonight we're joined by the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps. To talk health, we have our GP, Dr Sarah Jarvis. Chris Choi looks at the coronavirus rules and your rights. And we'll meet the postman who is streets ahead when it comes to delivering for his customers during lockdown. Don't forget, you can still get in touch on email, by phone or online. All that to come, but first, here's what you need to know as we begin week 7 of lockdown. As the number of people who have died in the UK rose to 28,734, Boris Johnson has urged the world to work together.
The race to discover the vaccine to defeat this virus is not a competition between countries, but the most urgent shared endeavour of our lifetime.
The Prime Minister is expected to tell us how, but not when, UK lockdown restrictions will ease this Sunday. One tool is likely to be a new tracking app. We've been getting our first look at how it will work. And the boss of Heathrow has said social distancing in airports would be impossible and mean kilometre-long boarding queues. Well, who better to start tonight's show with than the man responsible for the UK's airports, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps. I spoke to him a little earlier. Grant Shapps, Marjorie has our first question for you. She asks, isn't it time that people travelling to Great Britain are made to go into isolation for 14 days? Mr Shapps, you have said you're looking into this. Have you got a date for that to start yet?
Well, the most important thing is that we don't allow all the brilliant work that's been done by, the British people staying at home, observing the lockdown, to be undone by importing new cases. Now, up until now, when it's prevalent within our own society, that doesn't really have very much of an impact. And more importantly, most of the people travelling here, people trying to come home, millions of people through March and April who are British nationals actually returning home to come home and join the social distancing of staying at home. Of course, as we come out of this period, it is important to look at that again. And that is something that we're actively looking at right now, because it can't be the case that we're all having to continue in social distancing, staying at home, for example, and then importing cases would be obviously make no sense at all. So the medical evidence as well will go on this, and the medical evidence is what we're looking at again to confirm what to do next.
OK, but no date for us yet. A question now from Chris. He wants to know, what's the difference between an infection rate, the R number of below 1 and just above 1? Briefly, if you will.
Very simply, if the R number is above 1, it means if I get it, I'm giving it to more than one other person. And they're doing that to more than one other person. And all of a sudden, and very quickly, exponentially, you find that it has gone through the whole population. It's expanded very quickly. The other way around, if the R number is below 1, it means I might have it, but not give it on average to more than one person. In other words, it starts to fade away in society. So it's critical to get the R number below 1. When that happens, we start to beat this disease.
Why then is the R rate so important now in terms of talking about easing lockdown, but it wasn't when it was much higher in early March and large gatherings were still going on in this country?
So obviously there's a sort of point at which too many people have it, and at that point, controlling it requires other measures, and in other words, lockdown. Right at the beginning of this, of course, it was all very new to everyone. It wasn't possible to be able to detect everybody who had it, not least because, we had to build from scratch, from nothing, a capacity that's never been available in this country before, which is a wide-scale testing capacity. It's not something Britain had in the past. So as we beat this and get over that curve, the famous curve, it does mean that we want to make sure that stays under wraps. And that's why testing is so important. Tracking and tracing people who have had it is so important too.
OK, well, on that issue, Morad asks, is testing and contact tracing as effective at such a late stage as it is at an early stage, like in South Korea?
Well, of course, ideally, I mean, you would say we would know everything about this. We'd have all the knowledge that has now been built up through the weeks and months that we've gone through, understanding how this virus responds, all that scientific knowledge which has been built up. and also, as I say, had wide-scale testing capacity, which is something which has not been available in this country. We have a fantastic pharmaceutical industry in this country, but testing has not been at the centre of what we do. We design and create drugs, and that's one of the reasons why Oxford University, now working with AstraZeneca and the University College London, is working on potentially what could be a vaccine, but we'll wait to see if that will work. So we're very strong in that area, but we haven't had all of the other testing facilities.
OK, let's move on. Linda wants to know, why are there so many people still contracting the virus when we've been in lockdown for 6 weeks? Where and how are they catching it?
Well, that's right. I think out in the community, it's very likely now that fewer and fewer people are. We've seen very, very good uptake on the lockdown conditions, on the social distancing conditions. So it's unlikely to be happening, but it is a reminder that people should not break these rules. They should not sneak out and see a friend, perhaps, because unwittingly, if they do that, they will be spreading this around, and it just means we're all locked down for longer still. So it's mostly it working out of the system, we hope.
Pat wants to know, Northwest trains, commuter trains are already rammed. Social distancing will be nigh on impossible. What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, right now, commuter trains aren't rammed because people are not travelling, fortunately. What we need to do is to make sure that people don't just straight away go out again and work. We're going to be talking more about this times going forward, but we may need to look at things like staggering work times, obviously making sure there are enough trains that are running to make sure social distancing can be maintained.
OK, Hannah, and like many others, are struggling to get a refund for a flight or a holiday. She asks, how do we get our money back when the company is not cooperating?
Well, the companies absolutely should be paying money back if that's what people require. Other people are happy to opt for vouchers, perhaps sometimes a voucher with the benefit of being offered a bit more if they hold on to that voucher. But the law is completely clear, and these companies are required to provide refunds if that is what people prefer to get. And all the usual remedies for consumers are available to somebody who's not receiving a refund.
Grant Shapps, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And we'll put more of your travel concerns to the travel expert, Simon Calder, a little later. Now, though, it's time to focus on your health with questions for Dr. Sarah Jarvis. Good evening to you. Our first question tonight comes from Chanda.
I recently contracted COVID-19 and after 25 days, thankfully recovered. I recently received a letter saying that I needed to shield for 12 weeks. Do I still need to do this?
Does he, Sarah?
Well, Chanda, I'm delighted you're recovered. Of course, what we may well not know is whether you actually recovered from COVID-19. If you weren't tested, you can't guarantee that that's what it was. And if you weren't tested, you absolutely do still need to shield for your own protection. If you have been tested and it was COVID-19, there's a very good chance that you're immune to it. So you can certainly relax those restrictions.
OK, Sarah, let's stick with this question of immunity. Here is one from Harbia.
Can our daughter, who's a junior doctor, visit us when the lockdown is relaxed, given that she's recently recovered from COVID-19? It's her birthday next month, and it would be lovely to have something to potentially look forward to.
Wouldn't it just? What's your answer for Harbia, Sarah?
Harbia, you must be incredibly proud of your daughter. I'm so delighted. She's one of the NHS heroes. And of course, because she was working in the NHS, she would have been tested for coronavirus. So we know she's recovered. We've had really good news over the weekend from South Korea, where there was a concern that people who had been infected were getting reinfected. It now turns out, in fact, this was what's called a false positive. They weren't being reinfected. It was the virus showing up in dead lung cells. So if she's had the virus, yes, she will be immune. We hope that having antibodies means that you won't catch it again. We don't know how long that'll last, but it certainly should be long enough for you to have a great birthday party next month.
Mary's also looking ahead. She says, we are grandparents in our 60s who normally look after our granddaughter 2 days a week. Will we have to socially distance from her once the schools reopen? They haven't seen her during lockdown.
So, Mary, that's a bit more of a tough one, unfortunately, because if you're in very good health, then your chance of getting serious complications of the virus is much lower than somebody who did have serious underlying health conditions. But unfortunately, you are in your 60s, and that does mean that your risks of a serious complication are higher than they were 10 years ago, and those risks are higher than they were 10 years before that. So certainly if you're going to be looking after your granddaughter, if either of you has serious underlying health problems, I'd be very, very wary, and I would really take precautions and probably try not to give too much in the way of cuddles. Ideally, it's probably not a great idea even when schools go back, because that is going to slightly increase the risk of the virus spreading and you getting it from your granddaughter.
OK, Jack's got a question also about this issue of social distancing.
Is it true that you need to be in someone's company for 15 minutes before you can catch the virus?
Sarah, what's your answer for Jack?
So I understand where you got that impression, Jack, because when we first started talking about close contact, we talked about being face-to-face with someone for more than a couple of minutes or within 2 meters of them for 15 minutes at least. However, unfortunately, it doesn't take very many viruses. So basically, if you're in close contact, you're very likely to catch the virus. Unfortunately, you don't need to be with somebody who is infected for that long in order to get it. But the longer you're in contact with them, the higher your risk.
Dr. Sarah Jarvis, thank you very much. We'll be back in a few minutes with Chris, who will answer questions on everything from money to street parties, when you might be able to stay in one of these again, and your rights if you can't get to one of these. Plus,
I feel like a bit of a rock star when I go down the street sometimes.
the postman bringing some laughter with his letters. Welcome back. My next guest describes travel as the industry of human happiness, but not right now. Here to answer your questions about holidays is Simon Calder. Let's pick up on this issue of refunds we heard about a little earlier. Faye asks, my 85-year-old mother was due to go abroad in May. I've been trying to get her a refund, but the company refuses to give the money back, saying the trip has only been postponed. Can they do this, Simon? OK, well, clearly we've got oh no, we have got Simon Calder there. Yep. Let's see if he can hear us OK. Simon, can you hear me? This question about, what rights she's got. Can the company say that they can't get a refund?
Absolutely not. Her rights are completely clear, assuming it's a proper package holiday, which means flights and accommodation bought in the same transaction. She is entitled to all her money back within 2 weeks of the cancellation taking place. Now, it's easy to say that. The travel industry has never been in such great stress, and I would urge people to use as much forbearance as they can. But anybody who says you can't have a refund, even in, say, 3 months or 6 months' time, well, they are not representing the law. They are mistaken, I will put it politely.
Okie-doke. Kathy has a question. She says, I have paid a deposit on a holiday to Greece in August. The next instalment is due soon. Should I cut my losses and lose the holiday and the deposit?
Absolutely not. If you can possibly afford to pay the balance of a holiday, then please do, because that way you know you will either get a great holiday in Greece or you'll get all your money back, although, as mentioned, it might take a little bit of time. And if you don't pay the balance, then the only certainty is that you will lose your deposit. So if you can, always pay the balance, and then you'll have something, I hope, to look forward to.
Sit tight, be patient. Look, we've had lots of questions about caravans. Karen has one. I have a static caravan. I'm paying £300 per month site fees and the site is closed. Do I continue to pay?
Well, according to the Competition and Markets Authority, you don't need to. They say very clearly that if you've got an arrangement with something like a caravan site where you're paying money regularly, but you clearly at the moment can't reach the site to take advantage of it, then you deserve a refund proportionate to the time that you have lost. And a good way of effectively giving yourself a refund is not to pay the monthly bill. Now, the site owner is allowed to make a reasonably small charge for the maintenance of the place, but nothing more than that.
OK, a quick one from Bill. He says, I took out an annual travel insurance policy. My company refuses to put this on hold until we can travel again. Is that fair?
Oh, well, it might not be fair, but it's perfectly legal, I must say. They would say that they've given you the benefit of that insurance for all that time. So, you can't have any money back. But it's exactly the same with passports. Owning a passport costs a family of four £35 a year. And certainly anything like mine is not seeing much action at the moment. And the same applies to rail cards. They are losing value by the day. And at the moment, there's no prospect of any extensions.
Simon, a question you might not be able to answer. I haven't got the name of the person who wrote this in, but they want to know, when will holidays realistically start again?
I wish I could say. I'm optimistic about second half of June. I think I will be able to travel somewhere abroad. I'll be first at the airport in those long social distance queues. But generally, the big tour operators, TUI and Jet2, have cancelled everything up to the middle of June. And airlines aren't really looking at starting at scale probably until July. I hope that I can be more optimistic. As you say, it is the industry of human happiness, miserable at the moment, but it will get better.
Simon Calder, thank you very much for now. Thank you. And Simon, we'll answer some of your questions online at the end of this programme. Next up, Chris Choi. Look, we've got a bank holiday weekend coming up. So let's start with this question from Amanda. She wants to know, my neighbours have been meeting friends and family in their gardens. Is this allowed?
Well, as I think Amanda suspects, these kind of garden gatherings shouldn't be going on. The whole idea of these guidelines we keep talking about is to minimise this kind of social interaction. If there are large numbers in a garden, they've got to be members of the same household. That is what these guidelines say. But it's a really, really topical question. As you say, we've got a bank holiday at the end of the week to commemorate VE Day. A lot of people are thinking they'll celebrate in their own gardens, stay 2 metres away from neighbours, and still celebrate. Not an old-style street party, perhaps, but still a lot of fun.
OK. Carol wants to know, my mother is 89 and still has to pay bills. She cannot get out to the bank and does not have a debit card. Can she get a relative to draw money for her?
Well, Carol, great opportunity for you to perhaps connect your mum with the Post Office Payout Now scheme. The big banks and building societies are all signed up to this. What it means is that Carol's mum could get a one-time barcode voucher texted, emailed, or posted to her. That allows her to give it to a trusted person who can withdraw cash. But please, at the moment, be really careful about fraud. There's more than normal about.
What's that scheme called again?
This is the Post Office Payout Now scheme.
OK. Pamela wants advice about the workplace. Lots of people have got concerns about that at the moment. She says, I work for a well-known discount store in North Manchester. We still get very busy. Our customers don't take any notice of social distancing. I feel afraid and disrespected. What can I do?
God, it makes me feel really annoyed that Pamela's having to go through this, feeling afraid when you think of all that shop workers are doing to get us through this. It is the employer's responsibility to make sure that workplace is safe with all the distancing, with masks, with screens, if that is necessary. If customers are not adhering to the rules, they should be spoken to. If necessary, they should be asked to leave. And you know what? If things get really bad in a workplace, you can go to the health and safety executive. They can put a complaint through without even disclosing your name, if that's going to be a difficulty for an employee.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get more questions about returning to the workplace as the weeks go on. Emma asks, I own a hairdressing salon in Romsey. I'm hearing more and more reports of hairdressers going to people's homes to style and cut hair. Is this allowed?
Wow.
It isn't, is it?
It's not allowed. And so frustrating for people like Emma, who can see people wandering around clearly in need of her services. The salons have had to close. You're not allowed to go into other people's homes to do something like this. You can't do a socially distanced haircut. And if it's any comfort to Emma and the other hairdressers that are watching, just look at the kind of homemade hairstyles that we're seeing. There are online, and this is a good tip, there are some online tutorials to help with this kind of job. Clearly, this one's beyond any help, I have to say.
Right, a quick question for you to end with. Francis says, how can you clean money? 10 seconds.
Depends how much money you've got to clean. Better idea is not to try and clean money, although it is technically possible. Instead, clean your hands, wash or sanitize after handling money.
OK, Chris, for now, thank you. And we'll have more advice for grandparents watching when Chris, Dr. Jarvis and Simon join us online. Details of how you can watch are on the screen. Before that, we're finding out what life is like for people across the country who still have to head to work. We end tonight with the postman from South Tyneside who's delivering in more ways than one.
Yes, I'm John Michael Matson. I'm 39 years old and I'm a postman for the Royal Mail. I can't come into contact with customers anymore, so I have to sort of like put a parcel on the floor and step back, so it feels a little bit impersonal, give a knock. But I do everything by foot now. I don't get in the van at all. Today I've done 10.5 miles. It is tiring, yeah. One thing nobody knows, how busy it is, because everybody's stuck at home. They're doing a lot more online shopping, so there's a lot more parcel traffic coming through. When the lockdown was announced, I noticed the mood changed quite a lot in the customers, and it was almost immediate, like the fear in people. So I decided that I needed to do something to keep people's spirits up and give them something to laugh about. So I decided to dress up in different outfits every day for as long as I possibly could. At first, I was dressed as a cheerleader on the first day, which was a red and white sort of dress. I was getting wolf whistles, I had a few cars beeping the horns. The word started to spread, and then every day everybody was starting to come out looking for us. It's become a bit of a daily game for everybody as well. I feel like a bit of a rock star when I go down the street sometimes. And today I went out dressed as Thor, and I had children coming out dressed as all the different Avengers. The thing I'm looking most forward to is being able to go and see my mum and dad and giving them a hug. I've really missed that. dressing up, obviously that's helped as well, you know, because I'm spreading so much happiness to so many people. And that helps me get through each day as well, you know. Thank you so much for having me on, and don't forget, everybody, thumbs up for your postman. It's a thing.
Big thumbs up for the postman out there. Thanks, John. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for watching. We're back next Monday at 8 or online in a minute. Bye for now. Coronavirus Q&A online. I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Jarvis, Chris Choi and Simon Calder. I'll start with this one about grandparents. Alana, Chris, has asked, are grandparents who aren't in the vulnerable group able to do childcare for key workers? We touched on this with Sarah earlier.
And you might remember, although it seems that we're going back a long, long way, but right at the start of the lockdown, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said something specifically about this, saying, don't expect grandparents to help out because there's a concern here. Many of them are more vulnerable. If they're over 70, they're going to be very, very aware of social distancing. Even the younger grandparents shouldn't be mixing into other households, even if their households are relatives. The important thing for key workers in this situation is there are nurseries still open and schools to offer that kind of childcare support. So don't look first and primarily at the grandparents, love them as we do, but there are other solutions.
OK, yeah, if I can bring Sarah in on this, this is going to be a really big problem, isn't it? Not just for key workers, but for everybody when the schools do return. What's your advice?
It is a problem, but of course we have to bear in mind, firstly, that it's actually to look after the older people themselves, because statistically, no matter how good shape you're in, the simple fact of the matter is that your health is, or your immunity, your ability to fight off disease is not as strong now as it was when you were younger. And if you get older, you are much more likely to have serious underlying health problems, which could dramatically increase your risk. So unfortunately, if possible, there is a very good reason for suggesting you look elsewhere.
OK, we've had lots of questions for you about blood pressure medicine. Carol asks, is it correct that certain blood pressure tablets like losartan, I hope I've said that correctly, are considered to be an open door for the virus?
Right, there was a lot of concern about this at a very early stage, and that's because there is an enzyme called ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme 2, and the sartans, so losartan, but also the ACE inhibitors, which all end in april, block that enzyme. The theory was that this enzyme is expressed on cells in the lungs and in the heart, and that the virus could use it as a way in. The good news is there's been no fewer than 3 papers in the New England Journal of Medicine just in the last week, and they have all said no increased risk of developing coronavirus and no increased risk of severe complications if you're taking either a sartan or an ACE inhibitor.
Oh, that will be very reassuring for lots of people. A question now from Laura for you, Sarah. My nana is 100. She's in a care home and has tested positive for the virus. She had a cough 3 weeks ago, but now it's gone. She has lost her appetite, but is eating what she fancies. Is she recovering or still fighting the virus?
Well, if the fever has gone, even if she's lost her appetite, but it's gradually improving, then it may be that she's on the mend. The good news is that if the only symptom she's got left is a cough, then the chances are that she has fought it off, because we do know that after you've recovered from it, the cough can persist, unfortunately, for several weeks, but that doesn't mean you're infectious, and it doesn't mean you're going to get worse.
OK, we've got a question for you now from Jeanette.
My mum is 89 and she is suffering with COPD. She's been shielding since the beginning of March and she has a home visit arranged for her chiropodist to come this week. I was wondering, should we still go ahead with this?
What's your advice?
Well, Jeanette, it slightly depends how urgent this visit is, because chiropodists or podiatrists, as they're often more commonly called these days, but lots of people still do call them chiropodists, does that count as essential care? We are quite clear that if somebody, even if they're shielding, does need essential care, they should continue to get it, although with scrupulous hygiene and social distancing where possible. Clearly not possible if you're looking after somebody's feet. So if she does need it, this is one of the situations where, in addition to scrupulous hand hygiene, I would suggest that if the podiatrist wears a mask, it won't stop the podiatrist from getting it if your mum's got it, but she shouldn't have it because she's been shielding, but it may reduce the chance of the podiatrist passing the virus on to your mum.
Okay, Julie has a question. She says, I suffer from mental health issues and so does my daughter. My granddaughter has autism. Am I allowed to travel to them to help with my granddaughter and help our mental health situation? Really complicated, that one. What's your thoughts on it?
Okay, Julie, I'm really sorry, and I absolutely get so many of my patients are really feeling, in terms of their mental health, the strain of coronavirus. We've already answered the question about grandparents, and unfortunately, because you're a grandma, it's kind of not ideal. However, if you were going to travel there once, but not travel there and back regularly, I would say that if your mental health really is struggling, and so's your daughter and so's your granddaughter because of the autism, it would be a reasonable thing to do. But if you went there, you would need to stay there rather than travelling backwards and forwards. That's what really increases the risk.
Such a difficult time for so many people out there. Dr. Jarvis, thank you. If I can turn now to Simon Calder, we've got some many more questions for you. Claire wants to know, we have booked a cruise for July. We have been told the balance needs to be paid by the 6th of May or it will be cancelled. I've been able to contact TUI. Will we lose our deposit, Simon?
Look, if you can make every possible effort to pay the deposit, which it sounds as though you are, Claire, because you're calling them, you're probably emailing them, I would say that if they decided that they were going to say, aha, you failed to pay the balance, so you've lost your deposit, that would be a pretty cut and dried case for saying that's unfair terms and conditions. You might want to resort to the old-fashioned business of letter writing, actually putting something in the post just to say, I'm desperate to pay this, please let me. If you send it off first class tomorrow, they'll get it on the 6th.
Yeah, sometimes that old-fashioned way works, doesn't it? Paul asks, for the same company actually, our family should be going to Spain this month. The flight hasn't been cancelled. When should this be confirmed as cancelled? I feel that TUI are holding back in the hope I will rebook, but I want a refund.
Yeah, of course, and so do I. I've got a holiday even before that, 15th of May with TUI, thank you very much. And they haven't told me it's cancelled. They have told me that they've cancelled everything up until the 11th of July. So I've kind of, the 11th of June, do forgive me. So I've made my own assumption. But look, I've got an awful lot of bookings outstanding. I spend my entire life on holiday pretending to work. So I'm playing lockdown refund bingo. I've got money outstanding from TUI, from EasyJet, from British Airways, from Ryanair, from Cunard, from P&O. And the only people who've paid me out so far have been Premier Inn. Oh, and GWR Railway owes me some money as well, but at least they had the decency to send me a note saying they're trying their best, but it's taking longer than they hoped.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll remember the companies that didn't pay out in a straightforward manner. We've all had experiences of that in the past few weeks. Keith wants to know, I have a £10,000 family holiday to Florida booked with Virgin for June. If I accept a change of date to next year instead of asking for a refund, am I covered if Virgin go bust? This is a question for any travel company, isn't it, in the situation where you're being given a voucher, but we don't yet know, because we're still in the midst of all this, what might happen to these companies in the future.
Yeah, be wary of vouchers. Do not be wary of rebooking, because the holiday that you book is going to come with the same atoll protection as your original booking. I would just say, though, in this particular case, I hope, Keith, they've made it worth your while. I don't know giving you lounge access or an upgraded accommodation when you arrive, or even an upgrade on the plane as an incentive for you postponing, because otherwise in that position I'd probably say, tell you what, I'll take a refund, and then nearer the time in 2021 I'll see what's around and book whatever the best available deal is. But yeah, you will get protection for that. For other vouchers, be very circumspect. If you definitely only want a refund, then I would politely say to the travel company, I'd just like my money back, please. Please tell me when I will be able to get that. But having said that, TUI is going to, when it finally officially cancels my holiday, it's going to make me run around saying, first of all, you've got to accept a refund credit note. Then you've got to tell us that you'd actually prefer cash. A lot of the travel industry isn't doing itself any favours at the moment. There's loads of people on the front line working really, really hard. But some of the management decisions, I suggest, are not going particularly well.
Yeah, and Simon, what's your advice for anyone who has kind of given up on trying to get a deposit back or trying to get a refund and has gone for the voucher?
Right. If you've gone for a voucher because you feel that you have been misled and you feel you've been misled, then I think you have some hope. So, for example, British Airways will do anything to stop you taking a cash refund. I've got a flight with them, and because I happen to know the law, I knew that when they said your flight's been cancelled, I could immediately say, well, thanks very much, I'll have my money back. But it's incredibly difficult to get there. Almost every avenue you go along ends up with them saying, right, please have a voucher. Here you are, just click here. And I think that the Competition and Markets Authority last week came out and said, no, come on, unless you tell people that, you know, the honest truth, which is that, yes, we can offer you postponement, we can offer you a refund, but you're still, sorry, we can offer you a voucher, but you're still entitled to a refund. That's not playing the game. And I think there will be quite a lot of challenges to that kind of attitude.
And what would you say to those who are saying right now we should all be supporting these companies, all sorts of companies out there, but including travel companies, be it big airlines or much smaller holiday companies? So we should be taking vouchers, we shouldn't be getting our money back.
Yeah, it all depends which company it is. So the ones which owe me money, they are all big companies with huge reserves, and they are very able to borrow money to cover this unprecedented time. It's the smaller companies and the mid-market operators who've been delivering great business, great holidays for many, many years that I think are in a really difficult position. The travel agents are getting lots of people, and we heard actually at the start of the programme, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, saying, you know, if you're not getting a refund, then you've got all the usual remedies open to you, which, let me help you with those. It's going to your credit card company, asking your bank perhaps for a chargeback, or actually taking out a case with money claim online. I would hesitate to do that in many of the cases where you've got great travel companies who quite legitimately have paid a fortune to maybe airlines and to hotels in preparation for your summer holiday, and they genuinely have to get that money back. So I would give them a chance if you possibly can afford to do so.
Simon, you said on the programme a little earlier that we will all travel again. If we're talking about flying specifically, how expensive will flying be, do you think? What percentage increase do you think we'll be seeing given the rules about social distancing? Or even if we fast forward 2 years' time, will we see the end of low-cost flights, low-cost carriers?
No, we won't. And a lot of it, of course, like so much in society, hinges on when we get the vaccine for coronavirus. The prices are going to be all over the place, actually, for about the next 2 years. You're going to get, just to get us travelling again, you will see ridiculous prices like £10 one way to Malaga. That will be to get us on board. But you'll equally find that, particularly on airlines which are leaving the middle seat empty, that fares could go up by 50%. Longer term, we will have, I fear, less choice than we've enjoyed up until now, and we will be paying more for it. But we are inquisitive, we are adventurous, we do want to have great times, so we will keep on travelling. And let's hope, after all this is over, that we really appreciate every single day that we manage to spend away on an adventure.
Oh, what a lovely note to end on, Simon Calder. Thank you very much. Chris, if I can turn to you, look, the serious business of holidays is all this money that people are worried about right now. It might seem flippant to talk about holidays, but it is a serious business, isn't it?
Yeah.
The other serious businesses, of course, is if you've been furloughed at the moment. We've got quite a few questions still obviously coming in to us about that. Let's take a couple, give you a couple. Ian asks, my employer who furloughed me 3 weeks ago has asked me to come into work to tidy up and prepare for their reopening. Am I allowed to do this?
No, Ian. He might have a gentle word with his boss. Obviously, this whole furlough government job retention scheme is new to everyone. It was done in a hurry. That was the nature of things. A lot of employers don't fully understand it, and employees might be worth a gentle reminder to the employer that these schemes can be audited, and if government finds out that they have been misused in any way, then they can claw back money. And it's a golden rule of the furlough scheme that you cannot work for your employer. You cannot do tasks for them from which they can make any kind of money whilst you're on the scheme. The answer in this case is for the employer to use non-furloughed staff, if they have any, or to bring in outside contractors to do the work. But it can't be staff that are on furlough.
Okay, another one here from Tina. I have been furloughed. Can my employer terminate my employment immediately or at all without giving me notice? There will be lots of people concerned about that at the moment.
Yeah, it is a concern. This scheme has rescued a lot of jobs, put them on hold, put them onto hibernation, but there is a lot of insecurity around, very understandable. The answer is that when you're on a furlough scheme, you still have all the same employment rights that it's taken years and years to build up through case law and statute law. That's all still there. So you would still need the normal notice period before any employer could start any redundancy process.
Okay, I'll leave you with a difficult one. They're all difficult, aren't they? Goodness. Diane asks, I'm British and my son lives in America. I've always wanted my ashes to be scattered at the sea on the beach where my son got married there. If I died from the virus and it was on the death certificate, would this still be allowed?
Oh, blimey. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Hopefully it won't crop up as a practical
hopefully.
Thing you've got to deal with. But actually, there is nothing about the ashes from coronavirus victims that is a particular problem. It could be handled in the same way. What is a problem, of course, is moving something like that around the world. Normally there are specialist courier services, but because of what's happened to flights, they're not operating as normal. If you spoke to an undertaker, they'll be able to give you advice. And then once you got to the other side of the Atlantic, about whether you could, under present lockdown conditions, get access to the beach or special location where you wanted all that to happen. So some tricky challenges. Let's just hope they remain theoretical.
Yeah, absolutely. You've always got an answer, though. So I really appreciate that. Chris Choi, thank you very much. And to Dr. Sarah Jarvis and to Simon Calder. Thank you for watching. We'll be back here at 8:30 next Monday. Bye-bye.